Hello and welcome back to the Stronghold. It's that time again. We've got a brand new set just about to knock on the door. Streets of New Capenna should be dropping within 24 hours of release of this video. And as always, we're going to kick off a new season with a budget perspective of the new set, how that's going to affect what cards you're going to want to collect, both in this set and in other things already released that maybe get a boost from this. Of course, this first video is just the beginning of what we will be doing in this quarter. Definitely make sure you check out a video that will be coming in the next few days about all the free codes. It is our comprehensive codes video and is by far the most popular video that we do each quarter. From there, we're going to jump into some cosmetic concerns. Those of you who like to collect cosmetics, we're going to talk about some of the best ways to get them out of this set. Of course, Mastery Pass is something that is near and dear to my heart as a budget player and should be of a primary concern for you. Make sure to check that out. As always, we're going to be doing a quick draft and mid-week magic conversations. And our special focus for this, the fourth and last quarter of the budget year, we are going to be talking about and focusing on rotation strategies so that you finish up this year well and hit next year running. So with all that in mind, be sure to stay tuned. We're going to kick it off. But before we get into all that, what do you say we do the awkward thing and promote the channel? Allow me to take this opportunity to invite you to subscribe to the Planeswalker Stronghold for all your new player, free-to-play, budget, and midweek magic needs. As you can see, we aren't one of these huge channels that fluctuates tons of subscribers on any given day and doesn't even notice. Around here, you matter. Just like these fine folks here, who recently subscribed to the channel and chose to make their subscription public. You see, the YouTube algorithm seems to think that budget arena content doesn't matter. And while I know I can't change that, I think we can. So click the subscribe button to support the channel and tap the bell icon so you don't miss on an upload. And build a more efficient collection along the way. Now, what were we talking about? Oh, right. All right, so we're going to kick off this conversation with some hard truths that you need to be aware of as Streets of New Capenna drops. This set, of course, is built around 5 crime families, each one representing a tricolor ally set. So what this means is tricolor decks are going to become more and more important in, well, pretty much every format, but most notably standard. Tricolor decks tend to be more controlling and a little bit slower, which can create opportunities for very good aggro decks, but also spells doom for that aggro deck if they aren't able to perform quite as fast. So that is definitely going to be a point of contention as we talk about budget decks and trying to get the most out of our collection here over the next 3 months and really for the entire next year, because this set has some really good cards in it that I think are going to continue to have impact for quite a while. You see, these expensive multicolored mana bases are often built on the rare dual lands, like Deserted Beach. When you get a 3-color set, that means you need 3 different rares and probably multiple copies of each. And the hard facts are, as a budget player, you only have about a 50% chance of having even a single copy of any given rare. Now, as you can see, sometimes it works out, you end up getting full playsets of some color or another, so you might be tempted to play that color combination, or colors combination. And in this case, that might not be a terrible idea. White, blue, black is going to make a ridiculous control deck, and as you can see, I have the mana base for it. Another note to keep in mind, very shortly we're going to see the new player experience decks for next year come out, probably in August. I'd say it is almost an assured bet that these dual lands from the Innistrad set are going to be the rare land in each of those 10 two-color decks. So things that you don't already have the dual land for, you will be given a single copy on that as part of your new player experience. At least that's my expectation. There's no guarantee, but that's usually how it works. And if you have not done so already, stop opening your packs for Streets, Kamigawa, and both the Innistrad sets. For that same reason, we're getting ready to have the new player experience decks drop, and every card that you open may mean a card that you don't get for free as part of those new player experiences, and on whole, that means less rares and mythics for you, as well as less vault progress. So hold off on those for the moment. So again, when it comes to those packs, if you look across the top of the screen there, you're going to see the set symbol for all of the various sets, with the exception of Streets of New Capenna, because I don't have that graphic at the moment. So all of those that are outlined in green, if you come across packs of those, go ahead and open those at your discretion. There's no particular advantage to holding off on those. Those in the red outline on the left-hand side of your screen, however, I highly recommend holding on to those packs, either until the new player experience sets come out, or until we have a better idea of what that timetable is going to look like. It may not be the actual release date that's important, but a time period centered around that. More on that to come as we get more information. So those of you who have been around the channel for a little while know that one of the key things that I do in these budget perspective videos is take a good hard look at the uncommons, because that's where budget decks come from. Like I alluded to earlier, any given rare, you have maybe a 50-50 chance of having a copy of it, much less a playset. When you talk about mythics, that drops down to about a 1 in 5 chance, or about 20%. So most of your budget decks are going to be built around good commons and uncommons, and then splash in a few rares, splash in those expensive mana pieces that make the deck run just a little bit smoother or have a little bit more punch. But for the most part, are those commons and uncommons on the backbone. So let's start with the multicolored cards. And I'm getting ready to say something I have never said before on this channel, and that is the phrase build around common. When I look at Body Dropper, it makes me want to build a deck around it, and I think there's a couple of commons in this set that have that kind of punch. I'm not really a huge fan of the black-red Sacrifice Matters deck that seems to float around all the time, or black, white, red aristocrats, but this card may be able to go the distance. Whenever you sacrifice another creature, put a +1/+1 counter on Body Dropper. And for red and a black, and sacrifice another creature, it gains menace until an end turn. So it's its own sack outlet. Very, very solid. I think there is not only a limited deck to be built there, but something of the 60 card variety as well. Brazen Upstart, basically each one of the 3 color combinations has a creature and a charm and something else that we'll talk about when we get to it. But for the red, green, and white variety, Brazen Upstart looks like one of the stronger options. Broker's Charm on the other end of the spectrum, I think maybe one of the weakest charms. So I am not terribly excited about that one. Then we get down to the Cavalry Charm, and a lot of people are, well, talking some shit about this particular charm. I think this has one of the stronger options for budget players. So definitely keep an eye out for this. The Celestial Regulator is another one of those two-color commons. A 2/3 for 3 flying. When it enters the battlefield, choose target creature you don't control and tap it. If you control a creature with a counter on it, which would not be hard in this color combination by turn 3, the chosen creature does not untap during its controller's untap step. A lot of very high potential there. Ceremonial Groundbreaker, I think Citizens has a lot of potential. And I think that's better illustrated by the next card, the Civil Servant. Whenever it attacks, you may tap another untapped citizen you control. If you do, Civil Servant gains +1/+0 and lifelink until end of turn. Pretty strong. Unfortunately, you only get to do that once because it is a triggered ability, and generally it's only going to get to attack once. Unless you have some other shenanigans going on. The Ceremonial Groundbreaker, aka the Golden Shovel, is +2/+1 and trample. The trample being the most important part there. But this card is really obviously meant for a citizen's deck by the equip cost of 1 versus 3 for a non-citizen. The Glamour Thief has a lot of people talking about things you could do with this. I'm just not sure it's strong enough to make me as a budget player want to play a very solid 3-color deck. So yeah, I'm just not sure there yet. Similarly with Corpse Appraiser, I just don't think it's quite good enough. Crew Captain has a little bit more going for it in the fact that it's haste. But again, I'm just not seeing this because once it's no longer its first turn, it loses indestructibility and is very, very fragile. So you do get a free hit with it, but that may be as far as that goes. Darling of the Masses seems really, really good for the Citizens decks as an uncommon lord. It does only really pump that that front side offensive. It doesn't do anything for the backside defense. But I guess if you're playing a mass of citizen tokens, maybe you don't care if they all get killed. When it attacks, it replenishes itself and gives you an additional token. Disciplined Duelist has a lot of potential with Double Strike. The shield counter, I think, is a little less relevant. In fact, shield counters in general, I think, are a little overrated. Prove me wrong, Internet. Exotic pets, the fact that this isn't a cat sitting in someone's lap angers everyone who is a James Bond fan. But I guess it's a gangster set and not a super spy set. So there you go. Fatal Grudge, I think, is okay. Just okay. Forge Boss, I think, is really overrated. I'm actually much more interested in the Body Dropper that we talked about at the beginning of the clip versus this guy. Let's see here. Glamorous Outlaw. This is the first of that cycle of mana fixers, and I think all of these are really super good for commons. They don't necessarily have a build around potential, but they are great enablers for that style of deck that I think is coming around for the budget players, where you're playing a 2-color allied set and then splashing a third, possibly even a fourth, depending upon the combination. I think these cards really make that style of the deck possible. Let's see here. Jetmar's Fixer, Treasure. There's going to be a lot of it around, which is great because it does enable that third / fourth color pretty good. Lagrella, everybody's talking about her. I think she's a little overrated. Again, prove me wrong, Internet. But for Bant, that just doesn't seem that interesting. The Charms, Mestro's Charm, I think is okay. I don't think it's super duper awesome. Mass Bandits is another one of those 3-color mana enablers, which I think are pretty decent all the way around. Metropolis Angel, whenever you attack with 1 or more creatures with counters on them, draw a card. That feels like it could be really, really strong. To drop that on turn 4, then swing with 3 or whatever creatures and draw a card could be really, really good and somewhat game breaking, especially when it comes on the back of a 3/1 flyer. Mr. Orfero, whenever you attack, double target creature's power until end of turn. This is another one of those 4-drops that could just absolutely be groundbreaking for the right deck. And of course, by the right deck, I mean red, green, splash, black. Because you drop this and then swing with your big guy from the turn before your 3-drop and potentially do a lot of damage, particularly if your timing has lined up right and that dude has trample or you have a way of giving it trample. Nimble Larcenist, I think, is just okay. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals a hand. You choose an artifact, instant, or sorcery card from it and exile that card. It's turn 3, so you might catch them right before they drop their big bomb. I think this is a card that is much better on the play than it is on the draw, but I guess we will see. Obscura Charm is what I think you want to be playing on your turn 3. Return a multicolored permanent from the graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Seems really good. Or counter target instant or sorcery spell, or destroy target creature or planeswalker with value 3 or less. Honestly, for my money, which is nothing because I'm a budget player, Obscura Charm is the best of the 5. I know I keep saying this, but prove me wrong, Internet. Let's see here. Quaiza, Augur of Agonies. Whenever you draw a card, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Can be really, really good. That's another one of those 4-drops that is going to make or break the game, whether it goes answered or not. Revelers is another one of those mana fixers. Let's see here. Riveter's Charm, I think. Okay, so I think if you have good access to Riveteer color rares or the right rares or the Riveteer's mana base, this becomes a very strong charm. If you're more of a budget player that may or may not have access to those super awesome rare mythic cards, I think Riveter's Charm is the second worst of the 3. Let's see here, the Cavalry Caterer. I love all these chef jokes that go on with the Cavalry family. Very, very interesting. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you may search your library for a creature card with mana value X or less, put it onto the battlefield, and shuffle. So this card is as good as you make it. So if you have another good card to go get it and put it into the battlefield, this card becomes very, very good. If you don't have great choices or the mana to get the right choice, this card isn't very good. Obvious things said by obvious things. Security Rocks could be good. I think this is going to have an issue of what are you playing on turn 5 rather than this. I don't know. It could be an interesting ramp thing if you have early treasures, but I think this gets worse late game. And I think a treasure deck probably has other things it wants to do on turn 4. So I don't know. I'm really waiting to see what this does. Seraph is another one of those mana fixers. Pretty nice. Snooping Newsies is another one of those commons that I kind of wonder if it's strong enough to build around. But I'm also looking at needing 5 different mana values in my graveyard, which means I'm pretty much on a self-mill. Can be dangerous. I'm not convinced it's going to be good. Abjicators, another mana fixer. Stimulus Package could be very good. It depends on how strong these treasure decks get to be. I'm really thinking the modify red-green deck is probably where you want to be in red-green as opposed to treasure, but red-green is a very easy path to splash a third color in black, or maybe even a fourth color in white, to maybe do some heinous things because of all the treasure. I'm just not sure what that deck looks like, and frankly, I'm probably going to let the arena crew solve it, and then see if there's a budget version to be built. Syndicate Infiltrator, a Vampire Wizard, which is pretty nice. 3/3 flying for 4 mana. As long as you have 5 or more mana values among cards in your graveyard, it gets +2/+2, which makes it a 5/5 for 4. So this is definitely what you want to be doing on turn 4 if that deck is worth doing. I don't know yet. Tainted Indulgence is a clear way of trying to get that mana value threshold thing going on. I'm just not sure that deck has enough synergy to really be a viable archetype. I guess we'll see as time goes on. And that's our gold cards. Boy, that multicolor segment almost killed me. I had to take a little break and drink a little water. Talking for 7 or 8 minutes straight is a lot harder than it looks. So let's do something easy. Lands. There's basically 3 kinds of lands in this set. You've got your common base tap lands. The dual color ones allow you to late game tap 2 and the appropriate 2 color combination, sacrifice it and draw cards. So these are great late game options, particularly when it comes to limited. I'm not sure how much play they're going to see in constructed 60 card piles, but they certainly are a viable option for budget players because you will have full sets on this before you know it. The other ones are kind of like a Terramorphic Expanse, and the fact that you sack it and go get a basic land card of one of 3 allied pairs. Again, these are going to be decent little things, but the tempo that you lose on these is going to be pretty rough, particularly when you come up against something like a very fast monocolor aggro deck that is going to eat your face. Every turn matters. The last option on the lands are the rare tricolor. Yeah, I guess they're just tricolor lands. They each have this option to cycle, and the ones that you're lucky enough to get, obviously play with. But like I have said, I think a couple of times by this point in the video, any given rare, you only have about a 50% chance. So this becoming a significant portion of your mana base is not statistically likely. And honestly, I think rare lands are one of the worst things you can spend your rare wild cards on, unless you have a deck that you're very, very devoted to. Generally, I think your wild cards are better spent for things in historic rather than trying to improve a standard deck. There, I said it. Roast me in the comments. It is what it is. All right, so before we start talking about specific artifacts, I wanted to talk about the state of artifacts in general. Kamigawa Block gave us some very good artifact staples, and I think we are on the verge of a very good colorless deck. The next set that we are looking to have released for the fall for rotation is the Dominaria Return set, and we are almost certain to have an Artifact Matters sub-theme in there. I'm hoping it's a more generalized theme, but at the very least, I think we're going to see it in blue, if nowhere else. That set is also very likely to be monocolor Matters as well, and we might see some legendary themes return there too. Beyond that, the second set of the year, if I remember correctly, is going to be the Brothers' War. And if you think artifacts are relevant now, just wait for that, because that set is going to be all about artifacts matter in probably every single color or some way within the color pairs. Um, in fact, it would not surprise me if that set was 50% or more of artifacts, particularly now that we're seeing a lot more like equipment creatures and, well, I guess we've always had artifact creatures, but they're getting a little more imaginative with their artifacts, and particularly with modular cards. They can do a lot in that set focusing on artifacts, and I think that's where we're going to be. And now within this, there's only really a couple cards I really want to talk about. I think Arc Splitter has a lot of potential as a mana dump, particularly if we start getting good, efficient mana rocks within colorless artifact deck. Brass Knuckles, I think, is really interesting, particularly if you can put that in something like the Boros Equipment Matters shell and make that card really work for you with the double strike. This might even be something that makes you a little less dependent on the hammer in Historic, but I'm not sure it replaces that card. Cement Shoes, I think, is overrated. Prove me wrong. Most of the commons in this, I think, are more or less meant for limited and won't do much out of that. Scuttling Bug, or excuse me, Scuttling Butler, it just looks like a bug, I think is probably a little overrated and dependent on multicolor. Quick Draw Dagger is the one common I think might find a place in that Artifacts Matter construct deck, because this becomes your combat trick. If you drop this in with the uncommon that gets stronger every time you play an artifact, it goes from +2/+2 to becoming a base 3/3. This gives it a +1/+1, which would make it a 4/4 and first strike at instant speed. So that can wreck some combat situations very quickly, and I think this is probably going to be a 3 or possibly 4 of in that deck. And I think if you're not running at least 2 on this, you're probably doing it wrong. All right, now we're going to tackle the colors, and I'm going to do them in the order that I think has the most potential and the most potential power. And I'm really just going to talk about the cards that I think are going to do the most or have the most potential. Calling a Professional, I think, is an important card for red because it just nullifies all the shield counter mechanics. So I think that is going to become a very important sideboard cards for the multicolor combinations that can support it even at a splash level. Stockpile could be really good. I kind of want to build a deck around this. The sacrifice and add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of stash counters on it. This is just like a mono red ramp thing. Could be very interesting, and plus it's a treasure. It's just very interesting to me. Goldhound is another one of those Treasure Matters cards that I think may do a lot. Let's see here. Not a lot in the way of the commons. I think Pugilist has some potential as a big beefy dude. Arsonist, I think, is just screaming to have a deck built around it. 1 and tap. This card deals X damage to any target where X is the number of permanents you've sacrificed this turn. And there's just so many deck archetypes that want you to sacrifice permanents and creatures and things like that. This has the potential to be very broken. Again, that red, green, black sort of thing, this could be really strong. Let's see here. Sizzling Soloist. I'm drawn to this card just because the artwork reminds me a little bit of Power Dragon. I was watching one of his preview videos, and he was literally turning with his, or sitting with his head turned that way, and it looks so much like him. without the, I don't know, is that dreadlocks that this human citizen is wearing? But even with his glasses and everything, it just looks so much like him. So I'm drawn to this card and kind of want to break it. I'm not sure I actually can. We'll see how that comes out. Rob the Archives is another one of those that is just begging to be broken in the right deck, possibly even with Arsonist in the same deck. Strangle, I think, is a highly interesting spell because this is probably the closest we're going to get to Lightning Bolt in Standard. And of course, Sorcery Speed makes a huge, huge difference. Sticky Fingers, they push the shit out of this card. I'm not sure that it's good enough yet for this to be worthwhile, but maybe in the modified matters red-green build, this could be useful. We'll just have to see. Unlucky Witness, when it dies, exile the top 2 cards of your library. Until your next end step, you may play one of those cards. This has a lot of potential because this is the color combination with red, looking to sacrifice things. So this can kind of become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And well, that's it for my thoughts on red. All right, second up on power level, I believe, is black. And I want to start the conversation a little bit down the list with Grizzly Sigil. This has the potential to be a very good premium removal card in the right deck. But then again, when does black not have premium removal at the common and uncommon level? So maybe I'm just gilding the lily here. And speaking of gilding the lily, Illicit Shipment is a 5 mana tutor effect at uncommon. And it's been a while since we've seen a good tutor effect in any color really at uncommon. And the fact that you can duplicate this or I guess I should say copy the effect, it really gives us a possibility for a strong combo deck centered around black somewhere. This is 2 black pips, so it's probably going to have to be a mostly black deck. And I'm not sure what that deck is just yet, but I think this card goes a long way to enabling that sort of strategy. The Night Clubber, this card is going to be way more worthwhile than 50 cent. So yeah, I'm just going to wait till you laugh at that joke. Okay, moving on. When Night Clubber enters the battlefield, creatures your opponent control gets -1/-1 until end of turn, and you can blitz it. So if you blitz it, you pay 3 mana, easier to cast, so you can splash it. You get a somewhat limited board wipe or weakened state on all your opponent's creatures. You get to swing with a hasty 2/2, and at end of step, you get to draw a card. I don't know what more you could possibly want from an uncommon in black. That is super, super good. Silencer, if Connive is a good, worthwhile mechanic, this one's going to be really, really good. When it dies, target creature your opponent control gets -X/-X until end of turn, where X is the power. And depending upon how many times it's been able to connive is how strong its power is going to be. So the longer your opponent lets this sit there, the more options you get and the stronger this card may become. Rogue's Gallery, whatever. Tavern Swindler, I've never really liked these flip a coin, but somebody's going to build a thing with this. If only that worked with the mechanic from the Adventures in Forgotten Realms with the dice rollers. If this was roll a dice instead, this would get a lot more mileage in my mind. The Vampire Scrivener has a lot of potential. Whenever you gain life during your turn, put a counter on it. Whenever you lose life during your turn, put a counter on it. So yeah, that guy's just going to get big, and it's a flyer. And if you built a deck around this, you could make this card ridiculous. Whack is somewhat just that. It's a bit whack, but it's not the worst removal I've ever seen. At the third color spot, I give you white. And cards like Citizen's Crowbar, this is the type of card that you usually put in your sideboard, but it's main deckable, which means it's best of one playable, which means it's a pretty strong budget consideration. If Citizen.deck is good, this card is definitely going to be part of it. That's just how it is. Illuminator Virtuoso, this card has potential. I think it's going to be better before rotation than after, because we lose so many of those Magecraft enablers. But this is like Magecraft card number 7 or something. So I think that deck just gets better. Knockout Blow could be good. It definitely procs life gain, which makes it important for certain decks. I don't think you're going to hate having this in your collection, but whether it earns a spot in that deck remains to be seen. Mage's Attendant, I think, is a little more on par with what you want to be doing with your turn 3, because not only do you get a 3/2 body for 3 mana, but you get a second 1/1 body with a counter spell on it, basically as a bonus. Patch Up is another one of those great remove things from your graveyard, put them directly into play. This is going to be as good as the 3 mana worth of things that you have in your graveyard. The fact that it's sorcery speed is the only thing keeping this from being super ridiculously good, because if you could do this at the end of your opponent's turn at instant speed, it would just be kind of broken. And part of me wishes that's how it was. Rapine's Guidance brings in the graveyard play. Rumor Gatherer could be great if it wasn't for the 2 white pips. That's going to make it kind of hard. And I'm not sure this is what mono white, again, wants to be doing on turn 3. And Swooping Protector, as all of these shield counter creatures and effects, I think, are overrated. Once again, prove me wrong, internet. In the fourth relevant color slot is blue, and I think from a budget perspective, this is actually the color that gains the most from this set. And 3 of the reasons I think that are right here together on the screen at the moment. Expendable Lackey is just so much potential for a 1-drop, and then later as a 2-drop from the graveyard to create an unblockable creature. I think this is a card that you need to consider if you're building that budget mono blue tempo deck, whether this is your first year or much later on. I think this is a very good 1-drop consideration for that. Although there are definitely better options in Historic, it's going to be hard to get those without wild cards. Fairy Vandal is a reprint, but this is another one of those cards that I think might make mono blue draw 2 aggro a reality in Standard. It also fits nicely into that mono blue tempo deck in Historic. Not only does this have flash and flying for 2 mana as a 1/2, whenever you draw your second card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And yes, that's a counter, not a +1/+1 until end of turn. So this guy can get beefy. And in Historic, you definitely have some great ways to protect that investment. Another thing that could enable that, both in Standard and possibly in Historic, if it earns a spot, is Hypnotic Grifter, another 1-drop at 1/2, pay 3 mana, and it connives. So you draw a card and then discard a card, which enables your Fairy Vandal. And if you discard a non-land, that also pumps up your Grifter with a +1/+1 counter every time that you do it. So it kind of splits the threat here and makes your opponent have to think about whether they take out the primary threat in the Vandal or the enabler in the Grifter. Let's see here. A Little Chat is one of those. I think Casualty / Connive might be very, very good. If it is, this card is going to be part of almost any build that you do with that. Make Disappear is a card I have heard described as scary multiple times because for 2 mana and a 1-drop creature, like, I don't know, Expendable Lackey that you don't necessarily mind going to the yard, this is a 4 mana tax. So on turn 2, they can pretty much stop anything you want. An offer you can't refuse, I think, is okay. The fact that it creates treasures is a little weird. This almost might replace Spell Pierce in mono blue tempo, but I'm not sure. I'm not quite there yet to believe that. Let me see here. Was there anything else I really super wanted to talk about? Sleeps with the Fishes. I think that's just great. I love that. I'm not sure that the card's good, but I love the title. And Witness Protection has some potential. I mostly love the fact that it creates a quote-unquote legitimate business person. So that's blue, and if you've been paying attention, that means we're getting ready to talk about green. Yep, that's right, folks. Green is last, and not because the cards aren't good, but because it tends to shift everything to the very late game. So green by itself doesn't really have much of an early game. Things like the Initiate are dependent on 2 other colors to make it even worthwhile. One of the first cards that I think is really good is the Cleanup Crew, but it's 6 mana for 6/6, which is fair, but if you're dead before you get to 6 mana, it's a lot less worthwhile. But the fact that you get a 6/6 body that also destroys an artifact or an enchantment or gains you 4 life is really, really good. So if you get to 6 mana, this definitely helps you stabilize and control the board state, but you got to get there first. Courier's Briefcase is one of those cards a lot of people are talking about. It might be good, it might not. I think this is one that if it's going to have a moment to shine, it's going to be after rotation in the fall, not before, because I think there's just too much competition in green for that 2-drop slot. And Innkeeper is a card that's really, really good and proven in multiple situations. Let's see here. What else? Glittermonger I love because you can create a treasure token at a tap. So it's a Land-Aware Elf in a sense, but it blocks really nicely with an X4 butt. And well, he mostly has Moxen tucked in his coat, and that's enough for me to make it a cool card. Whether it's good or not will remain to be seen. Jewel Thief, I think, is one of the best arguments to play green as an early game strategy, but it's really one of the first worthwhile things to do, and it's a 3-drop. But it's a 3-drop that's a 3/3 with Vigilance and Trample, and when it enters the battlefield, it creates a treasure token. So this enables you to get to that turn 6 big thing, and it's pretty solid. I will definitely be picking those up in any limited environment that I'm trying to play green in. Prize Fight is a decent spell. Decoy is okay. The fact that it has Blitz makes it even better. Let's see here. What else? Venomous Connoisseur is a cycle of one of these cards that whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, this gains Death Touch. If it's the second time this ability has resolved this turn, all creatures gain Death Touch until end of turn. So yeah, if you can enable that, that's a pretty decent 2-drop. But unfortunately, it has a 2-2 body, and it's just way too easy to take out before you're really able to start using that. Yeah, I think really that's the only stuff to talk about in grain. So that's your card selection. Let's talk about. Well, actually, that might be all we need to talk about in this video, but we'll see. And once again, don't forget this budget perspective video is just part of a focus series on Streets of New Capenna. Make sure to check out those comprehensive codes, Cosmetic Concerns, and Mastery Passes video segments coming out here just within the next week or two. And of course, all this quarter, we're going to have a strong focus on quick drafts of Streets of New Capenna, as well as the midweek magic events and a rotation strategy for you. Don't miss out. All right, so with all that having been said, don't forget, smash the like button like Hulk would. And of course, comment and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And I hope you've enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it for you. Super secret tech time. If you've made it all the way to the end, comment down below and let me know where you're watching this video from. And until next time, I'll see you in the arena.